Why was she still visiting the same wall after all these years? The granite was cold under her fingertips, the engraved letters sharper than memory itself. Kate let her hand linger over her father's name, the way one might touch a wound that never healed. 44 years, yet the grief still had weight. The museum air smelled faintly of old metal, waxed floors, and the hushed reverence reserved for ghosts who had flown too high. Her eyes, pale and sharp even at 63, caught her own reflection in the polished surface. The woman looking back at her was weathered, lined, marked by decades of flight and sacrifice. But the same woman was also unyielding, posture straight, hair pulled tight, uniform or no uniform. A soldier once, a captain forever, a daughter still. Talking to him again. The voice came from Frank, the curator who had long ago learned not to intrude, only to stand nearby like a respectful observer. Kate exhaled. Someone has to keep him updated. Her voice carried the gravel of thousands of pressurized flights, of years lived in thin air. The world didn't stop when he went down. Frank gave the familiar sympathetic nod. He had been the one to tell her, years earlier, about certain files recently, peculiar mentions, a project name that had lodged like shrapnel in her mind, Sky Shield. And now, standing in front of her father's name again, she felt the weight of that unfinished truth pressing harder than ever. She whispered so only the wall, and perhaps the ghost behind it, could hear. "I'll find out what really happened, Dad, I promise." Hours later, Dulles International hummed with the organized chaos of pre-holiday travel. Families argued, children cried, rolling suitcases clicked across the polished floors. Kate moved through it with the grace of muscle memory, one of those rare travelers who belonged in the flow of airports as if they were an extension of her. Civilian clothes today, not the uniform, but nothing about her gait, her presence, suggested ordinary. "Captain." The voice pulled her from her stride. A woman in a Delta Airlines uniform stood by they had flown together years back, though not often, was smiling, but her eyes carried urgency. "Seattle today?" asked casually, as if catching up with an old friend. Kate tilted her head, curious. "Visiting my daughter." "Good," said Lowe quick. "Gate C42, boarding in 40, don't miss it." The words were strange, more like instructions than a friendly reunion. But before Kate could question, slipped away, pulled into the tide of crew movement. And so, 35 minutes later, sat in row 12, seat F of a brand new 787, her carry-on neatly stowed, her posture upright, her mind unsettled. She had long since stopped marveling at the comfort of passenger seats. Her brain still mapped the controls of cockpits even when she wasn't in one. But tonight felt different. The aisle seat filled. A young man, early 30s, nervous, too careful with his laptop bag, too quick to buckle in while the plane was still at the gate. She gave him the polite smile of a pilot reassuring a passenger. "First time flying," she teased. He startled, then forced a smile. That obvious Joshua Miller. She extended her hand. "Kate." She saw it in his eyes when she said her name, recognition, not admiration, as though her name had been whispered in rooms she had never entered. "An aerospace engineer," he said, "consulting." Something in the way he spoke about engines betrayed not fear but knowledge. Too much knowledge for a nervous flyer. She tucked the detail away like a pilot nodding a storm cell on the horizon. Noted, not yet acted on. Takeoff came with that familiar surge. That intimate moment where Earth was left behind and steel trusted air to hold. Kate let herself feel it, just for a second, the miracle her father had once taught her to love. But the unease followed her upward. 3 hours in, the cabin dimmed. Most passengers slept, lulled by the soft hum. Kate worked on her tablet, old files, reports. And then the turbulence began. Not the random bumps she could identify in her sleep, but a rhythm. Mountain waves, yes, but something else. Joshua's eyes opened at once. Not fear, recognition. "That didn't feel right," he muttered. Kate studied him. Just waves, Rockies below. He shook his head. No, that's resonance with the airframe. His precision chilled her. This wasn't a passenger talking. Another jolt, then a flicker in the engine flame outside her window. She saw it, and so did he. It's starting, Joshua whispered. What's starting? Before he could answer, appeared in the aisle, her professional smile fixed, her eyes sharp. She leaned down as if checking Kate's belt, whispering only one sentence. Lavatory, 5 minutes. It's about Cincinnati, 1986. Kate's blood froze. Cincinnati, the crash that had haunted her career, the crash that had raised her first doubts about pilot error. She glanced back. Joshua was white-knuckled, his gaze darting to the engine. Kate's instincts roared to life. Something was wrong with this aircraft. Something deeper than turbulence, deeper than weather. A ghost was moving through this cabin, her father's ghost, maybe whispering through vibrations and flame. And when the announcement came, it didn't surprise her. The first officer's voice, strained, cutting through the cabin. Ladies, and if there are any licensed pilots on board, please press your call button and identify yourselves immediately. A ripple of fear moved through the rows. Passengers turned to each other in confusion. Such calls were rare, catastrophic. Kate's finger hovered over the button. Her entire body leaned forward with decision. This was what she had lived for, what she had been trained for. Joshua grabbed her wrist. Don't. If Anderson's involved, you're walking into a trap. His words landed heavy, but so did her oath, the one she had carried in silence for decades. The passengers come first, always. She pressed the call button. Moments later reappeared, her smile now brittle, her voice formal enough for the watching passengers. Captain, the flight crew requests your assistance in the cockpit. Kate rose. A tall, distinguished man 2 rows ahead stood as well, his voice cut clean, military. Colonel Harrison Grant, United States Air Force, retired. I'm also a pilot. Kate's chest tightened. His bearing was familiar, too familiar. His hand gestured, both of you this way. The storm outside raged harder, lightning illuminating their faces as they approached the cockpit door. Joshua's eyes followed her, pleading silently, trust no one. And as the emergency code unlocked the door, Colonel Grant leaned close, his words a dagger in her ear. I knew your father, Captain. He was a good man, too good for what they did to him. The door swung open, and the chaos waiting inside confirmed every fear she had carried since the wall, since the name etched in stone, since the day she was 19 and 3 officers had come to her door. Her father hadn't been the only one sacrificed. And now maybe it was her turn. The cockpit was alive with warnings. Red lights flared across the glass panels, alarms pulsing in a chaotic rhythm, the kind of cacophony every pilot trained to fear but never wanted to hear. Captain William Anderson slumped in his seat, head tilted, eyes half-lidded. A faint froth at his lips, unconscious or worse. Beside him, First Officer Richard Carter fought the controls with both hands, his jaw clenched tight against the tremor of panic. Oh, thank God, Carter breathed when he saw them. He collapsed 15 minutes ago. I've been alone since. His voice cracked under the weight of impossible pressure. Multiple system failures. Engine 2's unstable. We're inside the cell. I can't hold her much longer. Kate didn't hesitate. 40 years of muscle memory took over. She slid into Anderson's chair, checked his pulse, weak but there. Get him out, she ordered sharply. Medical team now. Relayed the command, motioning a flight attendant forward. Anderson was lifted and dragged into the cabin. Kate's hands wrapped around the controls. They felt different from the old analog grips she had grown up with, but the language of flight hadn't changed. Airspeed bleeding, altitude wavering, turbulence clawing. The bird was hurt, but she still had wings. Talk to me, Kate demanded. Carter swallowed. Captain insisted we divert closer to the cell, said orders. I objected. He pulled rank. Then he started slurring his words. 10 minutes later, he gestured helplessly toward the empty seat. Kate's gaze flicked to the displays. Engine 2, temperature spiking, anti-ice failure, hydraulic pressure fluctuating, fighting itself. Denver's the nearest option, Carter said, relief in his voice at the thought of escape. But Colonel Grant leaned forward from the jump seat, his tone cutting through like a blade. Negative. Salt Lake City. Better facilities. More capable of handling experimental equipment. Experimental. The word hung like smoke. Kate didn't even turn her head. Denver's closer. We won't survive another 300 miles through this storm. Grant's voice deepened, authoritative like a general commanding subordinates. You don't understand the situation, Captain. The mission requires Salt Lake. Her jaw tightened. This isn't a mission, it's a commercial flight. 287 souls, we're going to Denver. Carter hesitated, torn between the conflicting commands. His eyes darted between them, sweat slicking his forehead. First officer, Kate said, her tone absolute, forged from decades of command. Declare an emergency with Denver Center. Multiple system failures. Medical emergency. Request vectors. The younger pilot exhaled shakily, nodding, and reached for the radio. Denver Center, Delta 847, declaring emergency. Grant shifted in his seat, his eyes cold, assessing. You're making the same mistake your father did. The word struck her like shrapnel, but she didn't flinch. Her hand stayed steady on the yoke. Her father's ghost had hovered in her periphery all evening, and now, in the dark reflection of the glass, she could almost see him nodding, urging her on. Lightning ripped across the windshield. The storm clawed at the aircraft, tossing them like a toy. Engine 2 howled. Warning screamed. Kate adjusted trim, nudged the yoke, her mind parsing numbers faster than thought. Flying at the edge of physics, holding a machine together with willpower and instinct. Grant's voice pressed on, low, insidious. That engine carries technology vital to our survival as a nation. If it fails, it must fail where we can control the evidence. Salt Lake is prepared. Denver is not. Her reply came like steel. If it fails, 287 people die, and that's all I care about. For the first time, something flickered in Grant's eyes. Not anger, something colder, calculation. Richard, Kate said evenly, reduce power on engine 2 to 70%, now. Carter hesitated. Ma'am, standard protocol says. I know the protocol, do it. Grant's voice cut in, sharp, commanding. Maintain thrust. Asymmetric power in this weather will kill us. Trust me, Kate snapped. Do it. And Richard, torn but sensing the unwavering command in her voice, eased the throttle back. The right engine whined lower. The aircraft yawed, pulling left. Kate trimmed it out with calm precision. The temperature dropped just slightly, but enough. That's a mistake, Grant muttered, but his eyes narrowed, studying her with renewed intensity, as if reassessing his opponent. The alarms quieted by a fraction. The storm didn't. Then Carter froze, his headset tilted as he listened. Denver cleared us for vectors. Emergency services on standby. Relief washed over the cockpit, but only for a second. Because from behind them, the cockpit door hissed open again. Joshua stumbled in, shoved by. His lip was bloodied, his shirt torn, and in his hand a pistol, small but steady, aimed at Kate. I'm sorry, Kate said softly, almost regretful, but her eyes were hard. This isn't about one flight. This is bigger than you or me or anyone on board. Joshua gasped, defiant even with the barrel pressing his ribs. Don't trust her. She's been with them all along. Grant's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Finally, some honesty. Kate's mind raced, years of crisis management turning seconds into an eternity of possibilities. The storm outside battered the airframe. each jolt a reminder that time was running out. The engine warnings pulsed like a heartbeat. "What do you want?" Kate asked quietly. "Continue to Salt Lake," Grant said. "Land at the facility near Hill Air Force Base. No one else needs to die tonight." Kate's eyes flicked to the failing engine, the storm radar glowing red. "No one else, or no one important to you." Grant leaned forward. "Sometimes sacrifices are necessary. Your father didn't understand that. Maybe you will." The mention of her father, the casual way they wielded his death like leverage, ignited something deep within her. A furnace that had smoldered for decades. "You murdered him," she said flatly. Grant's eyes didn't waver. "We honored him. We gave his death meaning, a test subject with principles, too principled." The plane jolted violently, nearly throwing Carter from his seat. The engine alarms escalated, shrill, urgent. A vibration monitor flashed into the red. "Engine 2 failure imminent," Carter shouted. The cockpit filled with chaos, stumbled, losing her balance. The pistol wavered. Kate seized the moment, reflexes faster than thought. She struck wrist hard, the gun clattering across the floor. Joshua lunged, tackling Grant into the console. Carter dove, snatching up the weapon. "Stop!" the young first officer shouted, his voice cracking but the gun steady in his hands. "This is my aircraft now. Sit down." The words barely settled before the aircraft shuddered with a deafening roar. Engine 2 screamed, then tore into silence. A vibration ran through the frame like a death rattle. "Engine 2 flame out," Carter yelled, dropping the gun to grab the controls. Kate shoved herself back into the seat, hands flying across switches. "Engine 2 shut down. Fire suppression engaged. Maintain heading." The storm clawed. The aircraft trembled on one engine, fighting physics with every mile. Kate's voice, calm, commanding, filled the cockpit. "Denver Center, Delta 847. We've lost one engine. Declaring full emergency. Continuing approach to Denver." Static crackled, then a voice. "Delta 847, Denver. Cleared direct. Emergency services standing by." Kate's jaw tightened. She would get them there. She had to. Behind her, Grant slumped against the wall, breathing hard, his eyes dark with fury and something colder, resignation. Sat restrained in the jump seat, silent now, her mask stripped away. Joshua wiped blood from his lip, leaning close to Kate's shoulder. "They'll try to destroy the evidence, whatever's left in that engine." Kate's eyes locked on the displays, on the storm ahead, on the fight she could not afford to lose. "Not if I can land this bird first." Outside, lightning split the sky, the Rockies looming beneath the storm. 287 lives hanging on the will of one woman, a daughter who had already lost a father to the same shadow war. And as the plane fought its way toward Denver, Kate swore she saw his face again in the cockpit glass, not warning now but steady, proud. "Not yet, Dad," she thought, "not tonight." What would it feel like to carry 287 lives in your hands, and know you had already lost one engine? Kate didn't have to wonder. She felt it now, in every muscle and nerve, the entire 787 trembling through the storm as if begging for mercy. But mercy wasn't in the sky. Mercy came from skill, from discipline, from refusing to give in when the odds demanded you should. Her eyes flicked over the panel, left engine steady, right engine dead, warnings cascading, weather radar bleeding with reds and purples. A storm too big, too hungry, waiting to swallow them whole. "Richard, maintain communications," she said, calm as if in training. "Vectors for Denver, continuous updates." The young first officer nodded, jaw tight, sweat dripping. He was good, green but good. She needed him steady. Behind her, Colonel Grant sat rigid, restrained but silent now, his eyes never leaving her. They weren't eyes of defeat. They were calculating, cold, as if already planning his next move. Was strapped down in the jump seat, her wrist bruised where Kate had struck her. She kept her gaze lowered, lips pressed thin, no longer the smiling flight attendant. The mask had fallen. Joshua hovered near the bulkhead, pale, shaken, but still burning with a quiet defiance. His lip was split, his shirt streaked with blood. He looked more like a survivor than an engineer. Outside, lightning flared so bright it washed the cockpit in white. For one breathless instant, Kate saw it again, her father's face in the reflection of the windshield, steady and unyielding. A phantom or memory, she didn't care. She clung to it. Denver Center, Delta 847 Heavy, Carter transmitted. One engine inoperative, multiple system failures, requesting emergency priority landing. Delta 847, came the reply, steady but urgent. You are cleared direct to Denver. Expect vectors for ILS approach runway 35 left. Emergency equipment is rolling. Kate drew a sharp breath. Good, clear path, but the storm wasn't done. Wind shear warnings began to flash, an invisible knife waiting below the clouds. Stabilizer trim engaged, she muttered, fingers steady as she fought the machine through turbulence that wanted to tear it apart. Richard, keep an eye on crosswind vectors. They'll shift with the shear. Yes, ma'am. The cockpit shook violently, a downdraft slamming them toward the earth. Passengers screamed in the cabin. The nose pitched down hard. Correcting, Kate said through gritted teeth, hauling the yoke back, trimming, riding the edge. For a moment, gravity itself seemed to slip away, and then the aircraft leveled. The altimeter steadied. Joshua whispered hoarsely behind her, as if in prayer, "How are you even?" Kate cut him off without looking. "Because I've been here before." Her voice was steel, though her heart hammered like a drum. "And because failure isn't an option." Minutes bled into eternity. Finally, the storm thinned. The glow of Denver spread below, fragile lights piercing through darkness. The ILS needles aligned. Runway 35 left, a lifeline waiting. "Gear down," Kate commanded. "Gear down," Carter confirmed, lowering the handle. The thump of hydraulics answered, followed by 3 green lights. "Flaps 30. Flaps 30 set." The warning still screamed. Crosswinds pushed hard against them, the wounded plane trying to drift off course. "Come on," Kate whispered, coaxing the bird down. "Just a little further." Altitude rang out 100 feet, 50, 40, 30, 20. She flared. The main gear hit with a jolt, nose down, reverse thrust on the left, engine roaring, spoilers deploying. The aircraft slowed. Emergency vehicles lined the runway, lights blazing, chasing them as they rolled. And then silence, the kind of silence that weighs more than noise. They had made it. Kate's breath finally escaped, shaky but controlled. "Ladies and," she said over the PA, her voice calm, steady, the voice of a captain who carried the burden and delivered her people home. "We are on the ground. Please remain seated while emergency personnel assist us. Thank you for your courage tonight." Applause erupted from the cabin, mixed with sobs and nervous laughter. Relief, human survival distilled into sound. But Kate didn't smile. She knew this wasn't over. As fire crews swarmed, medical teams boarded, and passengers were guided off, Kate stood by the cockpit door, her authority unmistakable even in borrowed uniform. Every face that passed her, tired, frightened, grateful, reminded her why she had pressed that call button, why she had chosen the path that led here. When the last passengers had cleared, the terminal filled with chaos. Reporters, officials, airline staff all flooding the area. But the ones Kate noticed most weren't wearing airline badges. Men in suits, sharp eyes, moving with purpose. Atlas men. She had seen their type before. Special Agent James of the FBI approached, credentials flashing. His expression was measured but not unfriendly. "Captain, I need a word." Kate studied him, suspicion instinctive. After his betrayal, after Grant's chilling words, trust wasn't cheap. "Regarding Colonel Grant," continued, "and the flight attendant, they're both in custody, making some unusual claims." Of course they were. Claims that would be buried, rewritten, filed under national security. Kate glanced around. She saw Joshua in the corner, surrounded by agents, defiant even under questioning. Carter stood with airline representatives, still shaken but alive. "And the captain?" Kate asked. "Anderson." "Stable, disoriented, toxicology pending." Gaze sharpened. "I'd like your version of events before this gets more complicated." Kate exhaled, her body aching with fatigue but her mind still sharp. "We'll talk, privately." A small room, closed door, the air thick with the weight of what was unsaid. Kate folded her arms. "Before I tell you anything, I need to know whose side you're on, because there are sides." Didn't flinch. 3 days ago, I was pulled from an investigation into the deaths of 3 Atlas engineers, officially accidents, unofficially cleanups. Yesterday, my case was shut down. Today, I find myself here, watching Atlas personnel swarm over your aircraft like they own it. So you tell me, Captain, what am I looking at? Her eyes bored into his. Decades of suppressed truth, of unanswered questions, coalesced into words. "Have you heard of Project Sky Shield?" He hesitated just enough to reveal knowledge. Cold War stealth program, canceled in the 90s. "No," Kate said, voice low, heavy. "Not canceled, privatized. Atlas has been using commercial flights for 50 years as test beds. Engines, materials, systems. My father was one of their test subjects, and so were we tonight." His composure cracked for the first time. His pen stilled above the notebook. "You're telling me?" "I'm telling you it's murder disguised as pilot error." Her jaw clenched. "And it's been happening for decades." The door opened suddenly. Joshua stepped inside, escorted by another agent, his face bruised, his eyes burning. "It's true," he said firmly, "and I can prove it." He set his laptop down, pulled up files, schematics, logs, internal Atlas records, modification lists for engines installed on commercial jets, evidence. Leaned in, eyes scanning the screen. His features hardened as the truth unfolded line by line. 17 aircraft, he muttered. Experimental components, unsuspecting passengers. Joshua's voice shook with anger. "My uncle discovered it in the 70s. He tried to expose it. They killed him, just like they killed her father." Kate felt the weight of Joshua's words, the echo of her own grief mirrored in his. For a moment, 2 families, 2 generations of betrayal, stood united against the same invisible hand. His phone buzzed. He read the message, jaw tightening. "Orders from Washington. Colonel Grant is being released into military custody, national security." Of course, bury it again, protect the machine, sacrifice the truth. Kate's eyes narrowed, and the evidence. His voice was grim. "If Atlas gets to that engine, it'll vanish, just like every other time." Joshua looked at Kate, fire in his eyes. "We can't let them, that engine's proof." Kate rose slowly, her body exhausted but her will unbroken. "Then we move now." Because tonight wasn't just about saving passengers. It was about saving the truth. And for the first time since she was 19, standing at her father's grave, felt that truth within reach. What happens when the truth is right in front of you, but someone stronger, richer, better connected is already reaching out to erase it? Kate had lived that nightmare once before, as a 19-year-old cadet standing in a Montana doorway while 3 uniformed men explained away her father's death as pilot error. And now, 4 decades later, the same nightmare stood outside a Denver hangar, wearing the suits of Atlas Corporation, dismantling her proof in real time. Through the window of the conference room, she could see them swarming over the crippled 787. Flashing lights, service vehicles, and men in coveralls that weren't airline mechanics, men packing engine components into containers too quickly, too carefully. Not repair, not investigation, destruction. His voice broke through her stare. "Captain, listen to me. If what you've told me is true, that engine is the single most important piece of evidence we'll ever have. But if Atlas takes it..." "They'll bury it," Kate finished, Like they buried my father. Joshua sat forward, eyes locked on the schematics glowing from his laptop. The engine control module, that's what we need. It logs everything. Temperatures, vibration frequencies, power levels. If we can pull it before they swap it out. Then we have proof, Kate said, her pulse quickening. Hesitated. You'll have about 10 minutes before they realize what you're doing. Maybe less. I can buy you some time, but once you touch that engine, Atlas will know exactly what's happening. Kate pushed back her chair. Then we'd better move now. The air on the tarmac was sharp with jet fuel and the metallic tang of ozone, the storm still muttering on the horizon. They moved as a small unit. Kate, Joshua, and a young FBI agent had assigned to escort them. The agent looked nervous, caught between orders and instinct. Atlas men turned to watch as they approached. One of them, older, sharp suit under a safety vest, frowned. His eyes narrowed when they landed on Kate. FAA inspection, Kate announced firmly, her voice carrying the tone of someone used to commanding a crew. We need the module download before removal. The Atlas technician hesitated, thrown off by her confidence. He glanced at his superior. Denver FSDO authorization, Kate added, crisp, technical. Standard procedure for Part 121 operators after engine failure. You know that. The words landed. For one moment, authority won over suspicion. Joshua moved quickly, kneeling at the exposed housing. His hands trembled, but not from fear, from urgency. He pulled a small diagnostic tool from his pocket, one that looked like a mechanic's reader but wasn't. He plugged it into the module port. A progress bar glowed to life on the tiny screen. 8%, 12%, 19%. Kate kept her stance between Joshua and the Atlas men. "What's your name?" she asked the technician nearest. "Reynolds," he said, confused by her calm. "Reynolds, you know what happens if you pull that module without an FAA inspector watching, right? You'll be signing paperwork until retirement." Reynolds blinked. 31%, 42%, 56%. Then a new voice cut through the night. Smooth, cold, practiced. "This area is restricted." A man in an expensive suit strode forward, flanked by security officers. His presence carried weight, not authority of law, but of influence. Kate recognized him instantly. Carson Hay, Atlas executive. She had seen him at industry events, shaking hands with generals and senators, smiling for cameras. Now his smile was gone. "I have a federal court order," Carson said, producing a document with a flourish. "Exclusive jurisdiction granted to Atlas Aerospace. All inspection rights transferred to the Department of Defense." The young FBI agent shifted uneasily. "Sir, we're conducting." "Superseded," Carson cut him off. "By order of Judge, Eastern District of Virginia, this aircraft and all its components fall under national security." Kate didn't look at the paper. She looked at Joshua's screen. 72%, 81%, 89%. Almost there. Carson's eyes snapped to Joshua. "What are you doing to my engine?" Joshua froze, the tool humming softly as it pulled the last fragments of data. His lips trembled. Kate stepped in. "Your engine," her voice sliced the air. "This is Delta property flown by Delta crew, nearly killed by an Atlas-installed system. That engine isn't yours, it's evidence." Carson's smile returned, colder now. "Evidence of what, Captain? That storms cause accidents, that pilots sometimes fail. Haven't we heard that story before?" The jab was deliberate, her father's death thrown like a stone into her chest. But Kate didn't flinch. 96%, 99%, 100%. Joshua whispered, "Download complete," and slipped the device into his pocket. Carson noticed the movement, his eyes hardened. "Security," he said sharply, "detain them." Uniformed guards moved forward. The young FBI agent half raised his badge, torn. Sir, I need to. Your superior has already been informed, Carson snapped. Stand down. Kate felt the noose tightening. The same playbook again. Confuse, delay, transfer jurisdiction, erase. She leaned slightly toward Joshua, voice low enough only for him to hear. When I create a distraction, get out. Find. Joshua's eyes widened, but he nodded. Kate turned back toward Carson, gesturing sharply at the engine. Then maybe you can explain, Mr. Hay, why radar-absorbing materials are lining the fan blades of a commercial aircraft. Materials specifically prohibited under FAA Regulation 25.603. Carson's face flickered, just for a second, then he smiled again. You have your father's arrogance, Captain, and look how that ended for him. The rage that surged through Kate threatened to crack her discipline. But instead of striking out, she stepped deliberately onto the maintenance stand beside the engine, knocking a tray of tools to the tarmac. The clatter was sharp, metallic, startling enough that every head turned for half a second. It was all Joshua needed. He slipped into the shadows, walking quickly toward the terminal. Carson's voice snapped back, "Take her." Hands seized Kate's arms. She didn't resist. Not yet. She had bought Joshua time, that was enough. Carson leaned close as the guards pulled her back. His breath smelled of mint and menace. You think you've won something tonight, he murmured. You've won nothing. Your father thought the same. He was wrong, so are you. Kate held his gaze, unblinking. My father died because he refused to sacrifice passengers for your experiments, and I'm his daughter. Carson's smile faltered, just for a heartbeat. Then the guards dragged her away into the maze of the terminal, into a holding room that smelled of dust and bureaucracy. A table, 2 chairs, no windows. Kate sat alone, her wrists aching where they had gripped her. She could hear the tick of the clock on the wall. Every second Atlas dismantled her proof. But she knew one thing Carson didn't. The data wasn't gone. Joshua had it. And for the first time in 44 years, Kate felt that maybe, just maybe, her father's death wasn't going to stay buried in the shadows of pilot error. Not this time. How long can silence last before it breaks you? Kate sat in the small holding room, hands folded on the steel table, the fluorescent light buzzing overhead like an insect that refused to die. She had been trained to withstand pressure in cockpits at 35,000 feet, under gunfire, under scrutiny. But this was different. This was the pressure of waiting, of knowing that every passing second Atlas was tightening its grip on the truth. The door opened, not Carson this time. His jacket off, sleeves rolled, eyes storm-dark. He closed the door quietly, set a file on the table, and sat across from her. You've got friends in dangerous places, he said finally. His voice wasn't accusing, it was weary. Kate leaned back, and enemies in every room that matters. Studied her for a long beat, then slid the file forward. Inside, photos, the engine, pieces already crated, a manifest stamped DOD property classified. They're moving it to Hill Air Force Base, he said. Midnight tonight. Carson pulled rank I didn't even know existed. My badge doesn't matter here. Kate's throat tightened. Hill, of course. The same place her father's wreckage had disappeared to in 1981. The same place no investigator had ever been allowed to enter. And Joshua, she asked. A faint smile touched his face. He got out, barely. He's stubborn, reminds me of someone. Kate exhaled, tension uncoiling slightly. The evidence was safe, for now. Leaned forward, lowering his voice. You need to know something. The cover-up doesn't stop at engines. Every pilot error, crash tied to Sky Shield, every one of them, the reports were scrubbed by the same judge who just signed Carson's order tonight. Federal bench since '85, always assigned the aviation cases, always dismissing appeals. Kate's hands curled into fists. One name, hidden in plain sight, erasing decades of lives. They can bury paperwork, she said. They can't bury data. Hesitated, That depends on where it leads. Joshua's files, they point somewhere. A place called Silver Creek, Montana. Ring a bell. Her chest tightened. It rang more than a bell. It was home. Where my father was stationed, she said quietly. Nodded. According to the files, that's where the earliest Sky Shield prototypes were tested. Radar-absorbing alloys. Avionics designed for stealth corridors. If anything still exists, it's there. The door rattled, voices outside. Gaze sharpened. We don't have much time. Carson's already spinning this into a narrative. Rogue captain interferes, endangers passengers. They'll hang you with it if they can. Kate's laugh was low, bitter. Pilot error, their favorite line. His eyes held hers. I can get you out, but if we do this, there's no going back. You'll be hunted. Atlas doesn't forgive. Kate thought of the passengers filing off that plane, faces etched with gratitude. She thought of Joshua's uncle, silenced, of her father's grave, of the wall she had touched that morning, promising him she'd find the truth. There's no going back for me anyway, she said. Not since 1981. His jaw tightened, then he stood, pulling a badge from his belt. Come on, walk behind me like you belong, no hesitation. The hallways blurred past, agents, uniforms, suits, all too busy with paperwork and authority to notice one more pair of footsteps. Outside, the air bit cold. A black sedan idled at the curb. Joshua leaned against it, a bruise darkening his jaw but fire still in his eyes. About time, he said. We've got less than 3 hours before they move that engine. Kate slid into the passenger seat. Drove. Joshua's laptop glowed in the back, code streaming as he cross-referenced files. They're moving it on a C-17, Joshua said, tapping rapidly. I traced the logistics order. Departing Denver Air National Guard Base at midnight, arriving Hill before dawn. Once it's inside their hangars, it's gone forever. Kate turned in her seat. Then we don't let it get there. Frowned. You're not suggesting. I'm suggesting we intercept it, Kate said, at the source. Joshua looked up, eyes wide. Intercept a military transport. Her voice was calm. I've done harder. The car grew quiet. Outside, Denver blurred into black plains, the road stretching endlessly east. Finally spoke. Even if you pull that off, Atlas will still control the narrative. They'll still say it was pilot error. They'll still bury your father's name. Kate's gaze drifted to the horizon, where the faint outline of the Rockies cut against the night. Then we change the story. Not just one crash, all of them. We show the pattern. We shine a light so bright they can't bury it again. Joshua's voice was fierce now. Silver Creek. The files say it all started there. My uncle traced shipments. Metals, electronics, all routed through a training facility that doesn't exist on maps. If we get inside. Kate finished his thought. We don't just prove what happened tonight. We prove it's been happening for decades. The road hummed beneath the tires. A plan, fragile but alive, began to take shape. Broke the silence. Then we have 2 choices. We chase the engine tonight, risk everything and maybe lose it anyway. Or we go to Silver Creek first, find the heart of Sky Shield and cut it out before Atlas knows what we're doing. Kate closed her eyes, hearing her father's voice in memory. Sometimes you can't save the wreck, but you can make sure no one else flies into the same storm. She opened her eyes. Silver Creek, we go home. Joshua nodded, determination etched across his bruised face. Exhaled, resigned but committed. The car carried them north, toward a place Kate had sworn never to return, a place filled with ghosts. And as the night stretched on, she whispered silently to the reflection in the window, her father's reflection, imagined or real, watching her still. I'm coming, Dad. I'm coming back to where it started. What would it feel like to drive back into the place you swore you'd never return? Kate sat in the passenger seat, the Montana horizon unfolding ahead, wide skis, mountains etched like stone guardians, the land both brutal and beautiful. To anyone else, it was open country. To her, It was memory carved into earth. Every mile closer to Silver Creek was a mile deeper into the grave she had tried to leave sealed. Joshua worked in the back seat, eyes locked on his laptop, the glow painting his bruised face. Lines of data, satellite overlays, military records redacted in thick black bars. Yet still, the map was taking shape. "Coordinates line up here," he muttered, pointing at a cluster of forested ridges 20 miles from the old town. "Nothing on Google Earth. No roads, no structures, but my uncle marked it 40 years ago." Kept his eyes on the road, hands steady on the wheel. If it doesn't exist on maps, it means one of two things. Either it's long abandoned, or it's still very active. Kate stared out the window past endless fields broken by rusting barns and forgotten fences. "It's active," she said quietly. "I remember the convoys. Black trucks at night. My father never explained, but I knew. They never shut this place down." The town of Silver Creek appeared like a ghost of itself. Main Street lined with boarded windows, a diner with its sign half fallen, a gas station with weeds growing through the asphalt. Life had left, but echoes remained. Joshua looked up from the laptop. "This whole place feels wrong." "It always did," Kate said. She caught sight of the church steeple, paint peeling, bell rusted. She remembered sitting there at 10 years old, listening to whispers of fathers working classified projects. Everyone knew. No one spoke. They stopped at the diner. The neon buzzed faintly, somehow still alive. Inside, a lone waitress poured coffee for a pair of truckers. Her eyes flicked to Kate as they walked in, a recognition too fast to be coincidence. "You girl?" the waitress asked softly, almost careful. Kate froze. She hadn't been called that in 40 years. The waitress leaned closer. "Your daddy saved my brother once. Brought him home from a test out near the ridge. Said he'd never speak of it. I never forgot." Kate's throat tightened. "Do you know what's still out there?" The waitress slid the coffee across, her voice low. "You don't want to dig it up." But Kate didn't move, didn't sip. Her eyes burned steady. "I already started." The woman sighed, looked around the diner, then scribbled an address on a napkin. "Old Ranger Station. North Ridge. They use it to cover the real road. Be careful, honey. Some graves don't want company." Back in the car, unfolded a map. North Ridge. That lines up with Joshua's coordinates. Joshua checked his screen. "There's encrypted radio chatter from that area, strong signals. It's not abandoned. Whatever they're guarding, it's alive." Kate stared at the mountains ahead. She could almost hear her father's voice again, warning her, or urging her on, she couldn't tell. They drove. Dirt roads turned to gravel, then to nothing at all. Pines thickened around them, shadows swallowing the headlights. Finally, the outline of the ranger station appeared, a wooden structure slumping into itself, windows boarded, roof sagging. "Looks empty," muttered. Kate shook her head. "That's the point." She stepped out first, boots crunching gravel. The air smelled of pine and iron. Her hand brushed the station door. Locked, she pressed. It gave with a groan. Inside, dust, broken chairs, old maps on the wall. But the floor too clean. Not dustless, but worn in one straight line toward the back. She followed it, a storage closet. She pushed the shelves aside. Behind them, steel. A door sunken into concrete, painted the color of forest moss. Joshua's breath caught. "It's real." Stepped forward, running his hand along the cold surface. No handle, just a keypad, old military style. "Give me a second," Joshua muttered, dropping to his knees, pulling wires from his pack. He worked quick, nervous energy in every movement. Kate stood watch at the window. The forest was too still, the kind of silence that didn't belong in nature. "Almost," Joshua whispered. The lock clicked. The steel door hissed open, air escaping like a sigh from a tomb. Darkness yawned beyond, concrete stairs spiraling down. They descended. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. The walls carried echoes, hums of machines, faint vibrations alive beneath the earth. At the bottom, a hallway, Fluorescent lights flickered to life as sensors caught their movement. Long corridors painted white lined with doors, not abandoned, maintained. Joshua's voice trembled. This is where it started. Kate's chest felt heavy, each step like walking into her father's shadow. She touched the wall as if it could speak to her, as if it could explain why he had chosen duty over survival. They passed labs. Glass windows revealed dark rooms filled with machines covered in tarps. Desks stacked with files stamped classified, though many drawers stood empty, stripped clean. But one door stood out, heavy, locked with newer tech biometric scanner glowing faint green. Frowned, this is the heart. Before they could move closer, voices echoed from the hall ahead. Boots. Kate's body snapped to alert. She pulled Joshua and into a side room, crouching low. Through the slats of a half-closed blind, she saw them, guards in Atlas uniforms, rifles slung, moving with military precision. Not Air Force, not official, private, loyal only to Atlas. Joshua's hand shook as he held the laptop tight. Kate put a hand over his to still it. The guards passed, silence returned. Exhaled slowly. They're still running operations, not a graveyard, a living program. Kate's eyes returned to the locked door. Then whatever's behind that door is the truth my father died for. For the first time that night, her voice cracked, but not from fear, from the weight of knowing she was close. So close she could almost hear him say her name. What would you do if the walls around you could whisper every secret they had buried? Kate felt it as she pressed her palm against the cold concrete of the underground corridor, the weight of decades pressing back. Somewhere beyond that locked door lay the reason her father had never come home. Joshua crouched at the biometric scanner, sweat streaking his forehead. This is military grade. I'll need a minute. Kept watch at the hall's bend, pistol drawn, though he knew it was almost symbolic. Against Atlas security, one FBI-issued sidearm was little more than defiance. Still, defiance mattered. Kate knelt beside Joshua. Can you get it open? He swallowed. I can fake a fingerprint scan if I bypass the reader, but if they're monitoring the system, they'll know the second I try. Kate's gaze shifted down the corridor. The fluorescent lights hummed, steady, too steady. Then make it fast. Joshua's hands worked, wires sparking faintly as he overrode circuits. Each second stretched, every sound. Her pulse thundered in her ears, but her breathing stayed controlled, like holding final approach in a storm. Then click, the lock released with a mechanical groan. The door slid open. Beyond lay a chamber unlike the rest. Polished steel walls, ceiling higher, humming with active systems. Racks of servers glowed blue, their fans whispering. At the center, a glass chamber, lights flooding something suspended inside. Kate froze. It was an engine core, sleeker, darker than any commercial model. Its fan blades shimmered with a strange coating, swallowing light instead of reflecting it. Around it hung diagrams, holographic overlays detailing stress tests, vibration signatures, stealth profiles. Joshua's voice shook. This is Sky Shield, the prototype. His jaw tightened. They've been refining it for decades. This isn't history, it's current. Kate stepped forward slowly, every nerve alight. She touched the glass, staring at the machine that had killed her father, disguised as progress. Her voice cracked into the silence. He wasn't crazy, he wasn't reckless, he was right. Joshua moved to the consoles, pulling cables, loading data into his drive. This proves everything. Every crash, every cover-up, it's all here. Alarms shattered the stillness. Red lights strobed across the chamber. Kate spun. The door behind them sealed with a metallic slam. From the intercom, a voice purred smooth, practiced. Carson Hay. You've gone a long way, right back to where it all started. His voice filled the chamber, echoing. Do you think you're the first to try? Others have come here. Idealists, they all left in silence. You'll join them. aimed his pistol at the glass chamber as if it would matter. "Shut up, hey." Carson chuckled. The girl who couldn't accept her father's failure, the engineer clinging to an uncle's ghost, the agent chasing a case that was closed before it began. You make quite the team of broken souls. Kate's hands trembled, not from fear, from fury. "My father didn't fail. He died stopping you from killing hundreds of innocents, and you've been hiding behind his name ever since." Carson's tone sharpened. "And yet here you are, repeating his mistake." Boots thundered in the hall, heavy, many. Joshua yanked the last files, stuffing the drive into his pocket. "Got it, everything." Kate's eyes swept the chamber. No exits, one sealed door, guards closing fast. She turned to options. He shook his head grimly. "Not many." Then she saw it, an emergency exhaust vent near the ceiling, ductwork leading out. Not designed for people, but possible. She looked at Joshua. "Climb." "What about you?" he stammered. "Climb," she repeated, voice steel. Boosted him up, Joshua scrambling into the duct just as the door slammed open. Atlas guards poured in, rifles raised. Kate and stood back to back. The muzzle of his pistol looked small against a dozen rifles. Carson entered behind them, immaculate suit untouched by the chaos. He regarded Kate with almost pity. "You could have left it alone," he said softly, "lived your life. Instead, you dragged ghosts into the light. Do you know what happens to ghosts in daylight? They vanish." Kate stared at him, unblinking. "Some ghosts don't vanish. They haunt you until you can't sleep." Carson's smile was faint. "Take them." Rough hands grabbed her arms. Cold steel bit her wrists. Resisted, struck once before they overpowered him. But as Kate was forced to her knees, she caught sight of the duct vent above Joshua's shadow moving just out of reach. He was free. He had the data. Carson noticed her glance. His smile widened. "Ah, the boy, don't worry, we'll find him." Kate's voice was low, trembling but fierce. "Maybe, but he'll already be running, and he'll already have the truth." Carson crouched, meeting her eyes. "Truth is what's real, truth is what people believe, and I own belief." For a moment, the chamber pulsed with silence, broken only by the whir of servers and the hum of the engine core. Kate whispered, so quiet only he could hear, "Not forever." Then the guards dragged her and out, away from the chamber, away from the machine that had claimed her father. But not before she heard the faint echo above her, the scrape of Joshua's movement, carrying the truth into the night. And for the first time, Carson Hay looked just slightly unsure. What does freedom cost, when the truth itself is the ransom? Joshua ran. His knees scraped against steel as he crawled through the vent, every breath ragged, every muscle screaming. Behind him, boots thundered, voices barked orders, but the ductwork swallowed him into its maze. His uncle's warnings pounded in his skull. "If you ever find proof, boy, you won't get to keep it long." He gripped the drive in his pocket so tightly his knuckles ached. This wasn't just proof. It was every silenced voice, every pilot branded a failure, every passenger written off as collateral. He couldn't let it vanish. The vent spat him into the cold night above the ridge. Pines swayed under starlight, the mountains rising like black teeth against the sky. The facility loomed beneath him, hidden under layers of dirt and lies. He staggered to his feet, sucking air, and ran toward the tree line. Inside, Kate's world shrank to the small circle of light where Carson Hay stood over her. Her wrists bled from the cuffs, her knees pressed into concrete. Knelt beside her, lips split, shoulders heaving. Carson adjusted his tie, calm as if delivering a lecture. "You've accomplished nothing tonight. The boy will be caught, the files destroyed. You'll be remembered as a rogue pilot who endangered civilians. The cycle will continue, just as it always has." Kate raised her head, blood on her lip, eyes burning with the fire of someone who had already buried fear. "You talk about cycles like they can't be broken. But I've flown through storms you wouldn't survive, Carson, and storms always break. He tilted his head, studying her. For the first time, he didn't smile. "Your father said something similar. Do you know what it earned him?" Kate's voice was hoarse, dignity. Carson's jaw tightened. He turned away. "Finish this." The guards hauled them down another corridor, deeper into the belly of Silver Creek. A sound grew louder with every step, the rush of underground turbines, the hum of power running through a machine that had no right to exist. They were shoved into a holding cell, steel bars, no windows, the kind of room meant not to hold but to erase. Sank onto the bench, blood dripping from his chin. "This is it, huh?" Kate sat opposite, back against the wall. "Not yet." He gave a broken laugh. "You always sound so certain." She closed her eyes, listening. Not to the guards, not to the hum of machines, but to her father's voice, steady as it had been when he taught her to fly in a battered over Montana wheat fields. "Never give the storm more power than you give yourself." When she opened her eyes, they were steady. "He's out there, Joshua, and he has everything." His breath caught, hope flickered, fragile but alive. Miles away, Joshua stumbled through the forest, headlights cutting the dark, trucks, Atlas security sweeping the woods with spotlights and dogs. He dropped low, pressing against the earth, heart pounding. He pulled the laptop, praying the files were intact. They were. Thousands of pages, engine schematics, crash reports, redacted memos, enough to damn Atlas 10 times over. But how to get it out? His phone had no signal. Satellite uplinks were jammed. He needed range, altitude. Then he saw it, the old fire lookout tower on the ridge, its silhouette stabbing the sky. Rusted, forgotten, but tall, higher than the jamming. He ran. Branches slashed his arms, his lungs burned, but he climbed. Each step up the tower felt like climbing out of history itself. At the top, he raised the laptop, aligning its antenna with the stars. Bars flickered. 1, 2, then 3. He hit send. Inside Silver Creek, Carson's phone buzzed. He read the message, face hardening. "Signal breach. The boys transmitting." He spun on the guards. "Find him now." Kate heard it, and for the first time since her capture, she smiled through blood. "He's faster than you thought." Carson glared at her, fury cracking his mask. "You'll die down here." Kate's smile didn't fade. "So did my father, but his truth didn't." The guards stormed out. The hum of turbines deepened as systems shifted power. Somewhere above, Atlas scrambled to shut the signal down. Joshua's upload crawled, 47%, 63%. Dogs barked below. Searchlights swept the tower. He stayed low, shielding the laptop with his body. A bullet cracked the night, splintering wood inches from his arm. Another. He ducked, heart hammering. 81%, 92%. Then black power cut, screen dead. "No, no, no," Joshua whispered, slamming keys. The uplink had been severed. Boots pounded up the tower steps. He pulled the drive free, clutching it to his chest. Even if the upload failed, the truth still lived here in his hands. The guard burst through the hatch, rifle raised. Joshua froze. But before the trigger pulled, a gunshot rang out from the tree line. The guard dropped. Stood below, pistol smoking, face grim. Beside him, Kate, wrists raw, eyes blazing. They had escaped. "Jump," Kate shouted. Joshua hesitated. "It's a long jump." He leapt. The fall knocked air from his lungs, but Kate and caught his arms, dragging him into the trees. Bullets ripped the ground around them. They ran, shadows against shadows, the forest swallowing them whole. Hours later, dawn broke over Montana. They crouched in an abandoned barn, breathless, bruised, but alive. The drive lay between them on the dirt floor. Joshua looked at Kate. "It's not finished. They'll still bury it. They'll still twist the story." Kate touched the drive, fingers trembling, voice soft but unyielding. "Maybe, but this time we're not alone. You've got the data, got the badge, and I've got a lifetime of knowing what it means to keep flying when everyone else tells you to land." His eyes were tired but steady. We'll have to go public, not courts, not official channels, straight to the people, leak it where they can't contain it. Joshua nodded, resolve hardening. My uncle died trying, I won't stop. Kate stared out the barn window, the mountains glowing gold in sunrise. For the first time in decades, she felt her father close, not as a ghost, but as a presence proud, steady, unbroken. Her voice was quiet, almost to herself. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And as the sun rose higher, warming the land that had buried so many secrets, Kate knew the storm wasn't over. But for the first time, she wasn't flying through it alone.